Have you had an experience in your 40s where all of a sudden you have an epiphany about a quality in yourself that you never knew was there? And you feel like you really know yourself, that you've put a lot of energy into knowing yourself, and then all of a sudden you're taken off guard. You're taken by surprise by this quality, and when you think back, you can see that it's a thread that's been woven through almost your entire life. This is the art of plenty. Today we're talking about really knowing ourselves and really being known by others. I have an affinity for coats, which basically means I really like coats. And I don't know if you're feeling the same way I am, but now that fall is showing up, there's this sense of, yes, it's sweater weather. And for me, it's coat weather. That means I get to wear coats. And here's the funniest thing about this. I had no idea that I even had an affinity for coats until last spring when I was sitting with a friend and we were talking and she made a comment about how I always have a great coat. And it caught me off guard because I've never actually thought about it before. And I thought, oh, I do actually have quite a few coats, and I change my coats quite frequently, and I actually collect them, and I didn't even realize it. I knew women did things like collected shoes, and I have friends that are really into purses and handbags, and I just kind of didn't even realize that I had something like that. Not that I don't like shoes or handbags, it's just not necessarily been a priority that is in my life. So I assumed that that just wasn't a type of quality that I had. And then I was faced with this realization like, oh no, you do. You actually like coats, Amy. And I was giggling about it when I was thinking about this because she mentioned it, but it just, when you're in a conversation with a friend and you hear things and it just kind of goes in one ear, out the other, the epiphany arrived to me while I was in the shower. Any of you have revelations in the shower? I don't know. It's something about the noise being drowned out by the water maybe, or the fact that it's my own time. I don't know what it is, but things definitely pop into my head in the shower. And I realized that as an adolescent, that was one of the things that I bought all the time. I spent most of my shopping in thrift stores. So what that meant is that I would bring home wool pea coats over and over again. And you can imagine what those wool coats smelled like if you've ever been thrift store shopping. And my mom didn't really have to spend money on my clothes because I pretty much had my entire wardrobe from the thrift store, so I was spending $1, $2, because back then, in the early 90s, the thrift stores were not expensive, and my mom would spend a fortune on dry cleaning all these beautiful wool coats that I would found that had probably been in somebody's closet from the 50s or the 60s or the 70s. I had a lot of coats when I was in high school, and I still have a lot of coats. There's something really essential about knowing yourself. And I mean, maybe not knowing that you like coats really matters in the same way that knowing that the way you process is by speaking compared to the way that you process is by thinking. Or perhaps it's not as relevant for understanding that quality in yourself that makes you run head into conflict rather than pull back from conflict and try to make it go away. There are some things about ourselves that when we know those qualities, we have so much more clarity about our life. We're able to make decisions easier and faster because we know how those decisions are going to impact our being. It's a way to regulate our emotions when we know ourselves. And I think the part that really stands out to me about the value in knowing yourself is that the relationships and the people that you are in relationship with can be more authentic. I think about that movie, what was it called? Runaway Bride. I think it was with Julia Roberts. And every relationship that she would have, she liked her eggs a different way, and she liked her eggs the way that the person she was with liked his eggs. I think I've got the right movie, but Not entirely sure about that. And when you know yourself, when you know what eggs you like to eat, and you're in a relationship with someone, you can be more authentically yourself because you know yourself. You don't go with it. And that doesn't mean that you don't change, and it doesn't mean that you don't grow, because that's one of the beautiful things about relationships is they cause our sense of self to grow and develop. But your relationship has the potential to be more authentic, more real when you know who you are. It also can give you a sense of purpose, because when you know who you are, when you know what your values are, when you know what you believe and where you're going, it can be a driving force. Especially if part of what you know are your triggers and what kind of things make you fail or how you respond to failure. When you know those things about you, you're really much more in a position where you can grow and become the person that you're meant to be. Now, the flip side of this, which we got into a little bit about authentic relationships, the flip side of knowing yourself is also being known by others. And there's so much beauty and value in being known by others. When you really are who you are with others, that's where you get that connection. That's what an authentic relationship means, is you have connection, you have validation, you have a safe space to grow because you are known. They understand your faults. That's what it means to be known. They know your weaknesses. They know the things that are going to bother you, and they know how you're going to respond to conflict. And because of that, they're still in your life. If they're still in your life, then it means that they know you and they like you and they want to be in relationship with you. And when you know that as a person, you're more able to make mistakes. You're more secure and have that safe space to secure. And that's always something that I say in counseling when I'm working with my couples, is this idea that the relationship can be a source of healing because it can be a safety net for one another, where you can push each other to grow because you know each other's dirty laundry. You know each other's weakness. The other wonderful thing about being known is people have insight into you that you may not see, things that you may not know about yourself. And when that insight gets shared with you, when somebody shows you their perspective and you see yourself in a new light, it helps to change the way that you move forward in life. It adds to that story of yourself and gives you an ability to grow. There's nothing like your partner holding a mirror up to you and saying, "This is what I'm seeing," because we don't always see the qualities in ourselves that are maybe not serving us. This has happened to me plenty of times in my relationship where I just kind of start going down a road, or, well, for example, there was one time in my life where I was super negative and I didn't even realize how naggy and negative I was getting. And when Jody held that mirror up to me and said, "You're kind of negative," what it did for me is, because I knew he loved me, because I knew that he really knew me, because our relationship was authentic and somewhat safe, or very safe, I was able to be like, okay, and really look at it. And then I could use that picture as a way to, that picture of myself as a way to move forward and change how I was, because in my core that's not how I wanted to be. And it was because of that relationship that I had with Jody that I was able to see myself in that light, and the way that he shared that with me, I could actually make change. Not that it was easy. That was probably one of the most significant things that I have done from a personal development perspective, is shift the way that I was acting and ultimately feeling and thinking at that time, because it was really toxic, not just for our relationship, but for our whole household and for me too. And when I made that change, I felt so much better. He felt better. Our whole family felt better. It was extremely significant. I remember when I was in my undergrad degree, so way back in the early 2000s, and I remember one of my psychology profs, we were talking about lifespan, and we were having a discussion about how siblings are lifelong friends. And I know that that's not the case for everybody. Some sibling relationships don't last. They don't have a lot of longevity. They have things that split them up or separate them, or one passes away, so the friendship isn't lifelong. But I remember when the prof said that siblings are your lifelong friends. At that time, I did not realize the significance of what that meant, but I knew that it was significant. I could see its truth and its relevance, that siblings are who you go through life with. You go through your childhood with them, and you go through all of those phases of growing and developing and changing. And your siblings are the ones who understand what it meant to grow up in the family that you grew up in. And yes, I know siblings can have very different perspectives of their family life depending on the way that the family is. But there is shared value, there's shared meaning, there's shared understanding when you grow up in the same family. And then if the relationship stays intact into adulthood, they get to be with you in all those significant moments of marriages and divorce and birth and your parents aging and potentially your parents passing away. And there's all of these steps that you move through life with as your siblings, because they're your family and you're relatively close in age, depending again on your family dynamic. I know I'm being general about the sibling relationship. And I've thought about that often. What does that mean? Well, there definitely are challenges that come from having a relationship like that, but it really creates a sense of shared history and a stable system for you to live your life. Because familiarity brings ease. It's more comfortable to be in places where you're known or where people know you. And the thing that I've been thinking about lately, this idea of siblings that are lifelong friends has been in my brain for quite a few years. But one of the things I've been thinking about recently, probably the last decade or so, is that when you live in the same community for your entire life and you know other people that live in that same community, there's something about those relationships. And I'm not talking about family and I'm not talking about friends. I'm talking about those community relationships that you don't maybe interact with on a regular basis. And I think part of why this has been on my mind lately is a lot of the guests, or some of the guests that I interviewed for Beyond Business, have been in my life since I was in elementary school. And others came into my life in high school, and others came into my life during the course of creating the show. So definitely a range in the types of relationships that I have with those women. But in some of the conversations with the women that I had met in elementary school compared to the women that I had met in high school compared to the women I met in adulthood, there were things as an interviewer that I knew about their life because we grew up in the same community. There are things that I knew about their history because I knew what school they went to and I know what it was like to go to that school. And it just builds this sense of knowing, which is really reassuring, and it brings a sense of ease because there's a sense of familiarity. And those relationships of being known is one of the ways that we build trust and feel safe in our world and feel connected in our community. I think part of the reason too that this has been on my mind for the last, decade, 5 years or so too, was the experience that COVID had on connection and how we came back out of that after COVID, and the energy that we put into reestablishing connection and recognizing those faces that maybe we've grown up with that have been around at the grocery stores or on the streets when we go for a walk. We see the same people watering their lawns or weeding their gardens. And there's something significant about feeling safe and feeling like we are in this together when we get to interact and see people that have different levels of relationship with us. So I've been thinking about these different layers of friendship. We have our relationship with ourselves, we have our relationship with our family and our friends, we have our relationship with our community and our acquaintances, and then we have our relationship with our mentors, those people that we look up to over time, that speak into our life and that encourage us. And mentors don't necessarily have that lifelong sense that other relationships can have, or they very much could. So I was thinking about how we have these different levels of relationships and what is unique about those level of relationships that they actually provide for us. So as I said with the family one, with the sibling piece, those are our roots, and there's a real sense of where you come from and your origin and that sense of identity and belonging. Familial relationships also are there for those major life events. They're the people that are there when you graduate. They're the people that are also there when you get married, when you get divorced, when somebody passes away. And the other beautiful thing about familial relationships is that intergenerational dynamic. When you have older relatives from your family, they tell you the history, they tell you the stories. And I remember that about my grandma. I actually did an episode all about grief and the stories that my grandma would tell. And what's been really wonderful about that episode is my cousins have come and said, well, they've said to each other, did you hear that one about grandma? And it's provided more opportunity for us to talk and share those stories, because the stories that I have about my grandma are not necessarily the same stories or memories that my cousins have. So there's real sense of cultural continuity and familial values that get shared when we connect with our family. Now, the beautiful thing about friendships is the memories. And friendships are a chosen connection, whereas we don't choose our family. We definitely choose our friendships. And when you have had long-term friends, it develops a sense of empathetic emotional support. It's ongoing. It's someone that you can turn to that is there for you and has evidence. And one of the things that I love about friendship is that I have lots of different friends where if we don't connect on a regular basis, it doesn't necessarily impact the degree of our relationship or the strength of our relationship, because the friendship is so long and we've been friends for such a long time. The history and the shared history that we have often supports the friendship in the future. And I love that about good friends. I love that you can kind of ride the coattails of past memories or past moments of support, and that they're there for you. That isn't to say that they don't require effort to maintain, because I do think that is relevant as well. Now, those community relationships, they provide that sense of belonging and social fabric and what it means to be in a network. And they're also, out of those relationships comes opportunities for our lives and for our families, because it often leads to collaboration, or, oh, I know this person, you should connect with them about that. It also creates a low pressure familiarity, which means that they don't necessarily need to know everything about you, but it's steady and it's easy, but it doesn't have the heavy emotional demands that a friendship can have when it's an acquaintance. But it gives you an opportunity to say things like, oh, how are your kids? Oh, what school are your kids in now? Oh, how is your mom? Oh, so you open the door into a part of your life, but not the deep parts of your life. And what's beautiful about that is you get to have these pleasant conversations of connection without having the emotional weight that you often have in a familiar or a friendship. Now, the mentorship relationships are relationships that provide guidance as your career evolves or as your family evolves. And it can help you when you have relationships like this. It can really help you stay on track for your goals and make sure that the values that you have are actually aligned with your goals. And then when you take that further, because mentorship is often about legacy for people. So mentors mentor people because that's a part of their legacy. It's a part of them sharing their life's work. And then that life's work gets passed on, and then that person integrates it, and then they too, when they do their legacy work, passes it on. So it becomes this continuation of values and goals and growth. And it's all of these relationships that come together and make life so full. So knowing yourself, being connected to your family, investing in your friendships, maintaining your acquaintances, and having mentors, and also, I would say, mentoring others. That's a lot of work, right? I'm thinking to myself while I'm talking, oh, have I been mentoring anyone? Who would I consider as a mentor right now in my life? And I'm thinking, are there friendships that I've kind of let go that maybe I need to check in with again so that this friendship stays? And am I being out in the community enough? Am I developing acquaintances? And all of these thoughts are running through my mind. Am I doing a good job being in relationship with the people that are in my life? And is there something that I need to change? Because all of these relationships come with some degree of effort and some degree of work. And yes, they provide value, but we also have to invest in them to get that value. So I'm just like running in my brain, do I need to make change? Because that's what it's really about. That's what the art of plenty is really about. It's not just about learning and taking stuff in and being entertained, which is definitely a part of it, but it's also about, what can I take away from this? What can I learn from this? What can I utilize from this so that I can be the woman that I'm meant to be, so that I can live the life that I'm meant to live? So I'm digesting that as I'm thinking about it. What difference do I need to make? There's lots of ways that you can deepen your relationship with yourself. I think of all of the lists, this one is probably the easiest for me because I like to have a lot of alone time, and I'm very introspective, and I'm very invested in knowing myself. So this is something that I do even without thinking, and I can tell when I start to get a little bit emotional or dysregulated that I haven't spent enough time by myself doing the things that I need to do in order to be available and loving and open to the people that are around me. So I guess that's the question, is do you feel like you know yourself, or is that an area that maybe you need to spend some time diving into in this season in your life? Next up, familial relationships. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day who was saying that she wants to be in better relationship with her kids. And it's harder when your kids get older and they don't necessarily tell you those things that they used to tell you when they're little. Teenagers are doing that life work where they're really becoming who they are. And there's some separation between family as they move towards friendship. And sometimes it can feel disjointed, like we don't know our teenagers the way that we knew them when they were kids. So a way to do that is to ask questions. And this is relevant for whatever familial relationship and friendships and spouses, the whole thing. Just get a sense of asking them questions and learning about them. When you show interest in them by asking questions, what ends up happening is they think, oh, this person's interested in me, and it opens the door. People are much more open in relationships when they get asked questions. And if you've got kids that answer things like no, yeah, and don't elaborate, ask questions that can't be answered with no or yes. Ask them creative questions to get them talking. Then there's all sorts of amazing games that you can play now. They have these like little card decks that you can buy that ask questions and get conversations started. One of the other things with family, and I've talked about this in episodes before, is that because you've been in a relationship for them so long, you can get into patterns of being. Oh, they're the quiet one. Oh, they're the black sheep. Oh, Amy always does this, such and such. And sometimes it can be hard to shift out of those expectations. But part of that is not, if you want that from your family, is to also give that to your family and allow your family members to change, and then creating new experiences together. This is a big thing I say with my couples in therapy too, is you have to invest in this relationship. You can't always just ride the coattails of your old memories. You have to be creating new memories too and spending time with each other. Don't just rely on the past. And that goes for all the relationships, with your parents, with your siblings, and of course with your friends. One of the things that happens in friendships, because we get so many things going on and we're trying to protect various relationships, we're not always vulnerable with our friends. And if you want your friendships to deepen, there's a element where you have to practice different levels of vulnerability. And that doesn't mean that you let them into all areas of your life. I'm not an advocate for that by any means, but looking for ways to open the door in your life so that friendships can deepen. And it means showing up. I remember one time my group of friends essentially told me that I wasn't being a good friend, and it was because I wasn't putting any effort in. And I was like, oh, there's that mirror again, right? Okay, what does this mean? What do I need to do now to change this? And I had to not get offended, and I had to not get judgy about it. Like, well, what are you doing for this friendship? I just had to move past that quickly to really hear what they were saying, which was, we want to be in relationship with you. Would you show us effort? Could you show us that you want to be in relationship with us? Because we miss you and we want you to be a part of your life. And so when I could hear what they were saying underneath the words, it was easy to be like, okay, I'm going to make an effort to call. I'm going to make an effort to make plans. I'm going to say yes when they ask me to do stuff. The other thing that goes a long way is just expressing appreciation. Hey, thanks for showing up today. Hey, thanks for that message. It made me feel so great. Hey, I had such a good time doing that with you. Any of those kind of things, it just makes you feel good when someone appreciates you and when someone vocalizes that they appreciate you. Acquaintances, community members, how do you deepen those? In the line in the grocery store, just talk. And I heard this from a person that is talking about increasing relationships and getting people comfortable. Take it one step further. Don't just ask one question. Take the question further. Or don't just say one statement, say another statement. So, oh, it's so cloudy today. Are you staying? How people always talk about the weather? Well, take that conversation to a different level by saying something more. Try to just say one more sentence. I've been experimenting with that a little, and it gets people out of their remote response. How are you? Good. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. They're just used to saying good. When you ask them a next level of question rather than just how are you, and they have to think about the answer, it slaps them out of that way of being and that routine way of responding, and then you get engagement. I've got a lot of notes today. What about with mentors? How do you stay in touch with them? How do you deepen those relationships? Gratitude, questions, and offering value in return. And I think one of the things that goes a long way with mentors is reflecting on the impact that they have. Because remember, a mentor is mentoring with purpose. People don't just mentor. There's a reason why they're investing in it. And when you reflect back to them what that means to them, it gives them the sense of, I'm doing what I'm wanting to do, and this is the evidence of that. And it's the same piece, I think, when you're mentoring others. You can deepen that relationship by letting them know what that relationship means to you. Because sometimes the mentor-mentorship relationship, mentee-mentor, can feel unbalanced. When you are reflecting on the impact and when both are doing that, it can shift that power difference, I guess, in the relationship, which can then deepen it. Holy moly, that's a lot of tips, right? For how to deepen your relationships. Here's what I want you to take away. For just a moment, of those different types of relationships, what is one type of relationship that you want to deepen? And who is that person? So it's not, is it a familial relationship? Well, who in your family do you want to deepen it with? Is it an acquaintance, or is it just acquaintances in general? Spend a couple minutes thinking or talking, depending on how you process, what you're going to do to deepen that relationship. It's going to snowball. The more you start leaning into it, the more you will find ways to do it. Because you're not going to be able to do what it is that you're meant to do. You're not going to be able to be who you're meant to be alone. Relationships are an integral part of your personal growth and living the life that you were meant to live. This is The Art of Plenty. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. If you want a more detailed list of how to do this and you want some of my notes from today's episode, you can check out the transcript or send me a DM and I'll send you my list of ways to deepen relationship. Have a fabulous day.